Hello and welcome to the Floridaville Express. This show is hosted and produced by the team at Rocket Ship Consultants, and it's based on our popular podcast, The Floridaville. The Floridaville Express is a condensed show, and each week we highlight people who are making an impact in and on Florida. I'm Jeanne Curtin. I'm an attorney, Florida's certified circuit court mediator, and I'm the business partnerships director with Rocket Ship Consultants.
Hi, and I'm Rosanna Catalano. I'm an attorney and the founder of Rocket Ship Consultants, a strategic communications firm. Our mission is to launch your business or organization and take it to the next level.
Our guest tonight is Dr. Dawn Emerick. She is the CEO of the Institute for Trauma-Informed Leadership and Change Management, founder of Dawn Emerick Consulting, and host of the podcast Leadership Uncensored. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to you. Welcome to me, everyone who's joining us.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you tonight, and we are just intrigued by your work and what you do. Can you tell us more about trauma-informed leadership and change management and why it is so important?
Sure. Well, let's talk about change management first. Change management, a lot of organizations do it. They may not know that they do it, but they are doing changes everywhere. And what we've learned from 2020 is that almost everyone, I don't know if I have met anyone who has not been emotionally, psychologically impacted by all of the events of 2020, not just the pandemic, but the George Floyd situation, the political divisiveness that was going on during the elections. There was so much going on. And change management is hard to begin with. That's hard, right? Like no one really enjoys change. So it's already hard. But when you factor in the traumatic events of 2020, those things are coming back into the workplace. And so as we are heading back to the workplace and people are really experiencing and trying to cope and heal from the events of 2020, you're going to have probably an increase of resistance. And so what we want to be sure is trauma-informed change management is taking all of those things into consideration. And rather than saying what is wrong with you when we experience resistance to change, it's a question of what happened to you and what can we do to help and support you. So it's really about reframing the situation given the events of 2020.
So Dawn, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you came up with the idea for your podcast and the business model, because what you're talking about just seems very important for people to have.
Well, the podcast was something that I had wanted to do for a very, very long time and just never really honestly had time to do it. But in 2020, I did. I was like, okay, I've got time now. Well, let's do it. I'm at home. I'm in quarantine. Let's do it. And so Leadership Uncensored really came out of this idea of just trying to be authentic about how hard leadership is. It is not a glorious sport at all. You get a lot of rewards, but it's hard work and you fall down a lot. Sometimes it's very isolating. So you don't feel like you have a lot of support around you. So you're out there doing it by yourself. And so I felt like I had somewhat of some capital that I thought I want to create a channel, whether through a podcast or anything else, where I wanted to bring speakers on who could talk authentically about leadership and about how hard it is. And that's what we do. We do not, and I tell my guests, I don't want to come on and soften this up. I need you to bring the stories. This is not a gotcha. So I don't want people telling stories that are going to like throw anybody under the bus and, go viral for bad reasons. But I do want us to have very clear conversations about just how difficult leadership is and what are the lessons learned. We've got a lot of emerging leaders out there that don't know how to get started. They're reading books, top 10, the advice of, all of these folks that are publishing books, but sometimes those are not realistic. So Leadership Uncensored is really just a place for us to be real about how hard leadership is. And then just my background, it's funny. I talk about this in my podcast that when I was in the fourth grade, oh geez, not one of my good moments, but when I was in elementary school, I was asked to help navigate first graders around the library and show them around. And so I would do that. But then I kind of created a test afterwards. I was in the 4th grade, y'all. And I tested the first graders to see how much they remembered and where the Dewey Decimal Index card and all that stuff. And I got reported by a mother who told me that I was like mean to the first grader because I was giving them a test. I know. But here's the idea. Like I knew even then, I knew how important performance measures were. I knew how important outcomes were. So anyway, I've always sort of been this natural leader. And so my background was always like, I always knew that if you put me in the middle of a crowd, that I was going to be the one that was going to try to help people to find the exit door. And every position that I've had, I've always sort of generated that. And I love leadership. I love organizational design. And I really, truly believe, you always hear about customer first. I don't believe that. I believe employee first. I believe investment in your workforce first. If you do that, then the customers will matter. I just really believe that. So everything I've done, I've always just sort of focused on leadership investment of the organization. And and so I've been a CEO of 2 nonprofits prior to the one that I'm leading now, and a senior executive of county level positions. So I've seen it all. Good and bad.
Well, and it sounds like all of your skill set and your experience, it's really timely. You try to look at what are the positives of 2020 and we take them where we can find them. But for people to take a step back and really say, I need to think about the members of my team and what they've gone through and how to make sure they're really successful moving forward, because not only is it the right thing to do and it helps them, but ultimately it helps your business if the members of the team are healthy and operating.
No question. And so I want to throw some stats out, okay? Because I really want to kind of set the stage of what we're talking about. And so this is pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we knew that the research showed that 70% of Americans experience some form of traumatic event in their childhood, 70%. So those are folks who are coming into the workplace, right? But you don't talk about any of that trauma in the workplace, but they're bringing it. It's 70%. I can guarantee you since 2020, that is way up. I mean, I would even say it's high 90s at this point. And if they're not acknowledging the trauma, then they're in denial, honestly. So we know that. What we also know to be true is that in the time during the first shutdown of the pandemic, that the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Disaster Distress Hotline saw an 890% spike in phone calls. 890%. All right. These are folks, these are your workforce. This is your workforce leadership. I mean, so leaders that are watching this, these are your team members that are calling because they're in distress. While deaths by suicide has decreased a little bit, which is a little bit of surprise. What we do know is that feelings of isolation, depression, and anxiety are still high, especially in our youth. So I want you to listen to this, and I'm going to name off some counties here. Alachua County here in Florida, for non-fatal hospitalizations of self-harm. Let me repeat that. Non-fatal, so they did not die. Hospitalization for self-harm. So they didn't die, but they harmed themselves and they were hospitalized for that. Alachua County had 149.2 people out of 100,000, where Florida was 62. So you're talking more than double the rate of self-harm, hospitalizations of self-harm in youth in Alachua. Here's Indian River County. These are hospitalizations for mood and depressive disorders in Indian River. 991 per 100,000 of our youth. The Florida average was 467. So this is our future workforce that we're talking about. This is trauma. And so when they come into the workforce, if they do, cross our fingers that these are pretty traumatic things here that I'm just talking about. If we get them into the workforce, how is the organizational culture prepared to deal with the mental health and the trauma that these youth are experiencing in their adolescence, right? And so our workforce has got to change, and our leadership has to change to where we are addressing the trauma of our workforce, not just the families that we serve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I want to take a little bit of a shift. We actually have a viewer question. Can childhood abuse and trauma cause personality disorders like narcissism? They're asking. I know we're talking a little bit more about leadership tonight, but one of our viewers is asking.
No, I think that's a great question. And narcissism comes up a lot in a leadership trait. It's not very, it's not a very.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Unfortunately, I had to deal with one. And I think all of us probably have somewhat in our career. But, and I'm not a psychologist, but we do know that there is an association between narcissistic tendencies and some childhood trauma. We do know that. We also know that because of attachment, like if you hear about attachment theory in adolescence, we know that children who do not have great attachment to adults can also lead to certain behaviors and characteristics in the workplace where they have a difficult time attaching to their leader or attaching to their teammates. And sometimes they'll be described as aloof and put offish. They're not team players. So again, rather than labeling folks as difficult and disciplining them for that, we do have to take a step back and look at the narcissism, look at some of those resistant characteristics and wonder if there's some trauma underneath that.
A little bit of a pivot, but it does tie into what you're talking about, people's, not only their childhood, but then what they've experienced in the workforce. Who or what shaped your leadership style?
It's evolving. Gosh, I had great mentors when I was coming up in my career. I had tough mentors. I had folks that would tell it like it is. But with a way of saying, I care for you, I want you to succeed, and I'm being tough on you because I want you to do better. That's a whole different approach than someone who is the narcissist kind of a thing, right? Or very authoritative and my way or the highway. But I would say that one of my, the experiences of being a leader is the best training situation. So I had some mentors. I've only had 2 people that have made me cry. And we'll save that for a whole nother show. But I think that one of the greatest experience I had is when I was the CEO of the Health Planning Council of Northeast Florida. And I had a board of directors who weren't afraid to coach me. And one of the things that they would always tell me is, John, you get too far out ahead of the headlights. We need you to come back. We're a partnership. Come back. Don't think that you have to have all the answers. They also allowed me to shine. They gave me the balance of giving me great coaching, but they moved out of the way to allow me to sort of come into my own as a leader. I made a ton of mistakes. I did some things that probably were not very trauma informed. And it wasn't until really some deep reflection of where I am today, because I'm inundated this and I'm doing into this and I'm doing a lot of training, that I realized that I probably should reach back to some of those folks back in the day and actually apologize and just say, I don't think that I was really my best self during that time. So we all have to kind of do our own work as leaders. Let's do our own work. We've got to address our own trauma. We've got to address, some of those things that form our leadership style. And but we're always evolving. We're always evolving. But I got to tell you, we better start doing something different. We know that there's a mass exodus that's occurring in the workforce right now. People are choosing happiness over the stability of their finances. And if you want to keep these folks, then we've got to change the culture and we've got to change the way that we lead and engage our workforce.
Great words of wisdom and insight, Dawn. We're going to take a really quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Dr. Dawn Emerick.
At Rocket Ship Consultants, our mission is to take your organization to the next level. Our team develops strategic communication plans that help entrepreneurs, corporations, associations, and individuals reach new heights. Our consulting team is made up of attorneys with additional experience in journalism, public relations, politics, broadcasting, and advocacy. Let us help you take that dream you have for a podcast or video show and make it into a reality. We can create networking opportunities, educational forums, and interactive conferences to spread your message. Let our team provide you with fresh ideas and inspiration. Rocket Ship Consultants offers a variety of services, so check out our website at rocketshipconsultants.com. Take off with Rocket Ship Consultants and launch your organization with us.
Welcome back. Our guest tonight is Dr. Dawn Emerick. She's an expert on trauma-informed leadership and transformational change within organizations. Now, Dawn, I know that we had actually solicited you for some questions, and we're coming at this at a really different angle. You're given a free trip to Hawaii, but you have to take your boss from your last job with you and spend every minute with them. Are you going? I know what my answer is.
Wow. It's clearly, I know what my answer is. And my answer is hell no. But let's examine that. I want to ask that question to the people who are going to be viewing this, who are watching us now. Ask yourself that question. If the answer is no, why? Why is that? And I think that that's I love this question. I had more people that say no than they say yes. And it's always intriguing to me because I want to know, well, why? First of all, if you said yes, why? And most of the questions are because they're really great people. And they say, I could really have a good relationship with that person if they weren't my boss. I could have a friendship with them, but they're my boss. And so we have boundaries. And those who have no to that question, most of it is because there is no relationship there. They don't respect them. They're too authoritative. They're not nice. That seems to be, then you can have this argument that people will say, well, that's not their role. Their role is not to be nice. Okay. So you don't have to be friends with your employees, but you also need to make sure there's that boundary between understanding what your role is as a boss and as a supervisor, but also not being a jerk. And when I ask people that question, most of their responses are because their boss is a jerk. And so now you understand my Leadership Uncensored podcast, right? Yeah. So I think that it's one of those, I think it's a really great question. And so what are your answers? I heard, so yeah, you didn't want to say it.
That would be a strong pass for me.
Oh, that's so
leave
funny.
It at that.
Okay. No more words. You didn't have to say anything. I
think you're right. I don't think that being a good leader and being a jerk, that they have to go hand in hand. I think you can be kind. You can be cognizant of what's going on in your employees' lives. You can make adjustments because of that in the workplace and help them, whatever it is. I don't think you can be supportive and you can be kind. And I think you still can be firm and a good leader. I think I really strongly believe in that, and I've had good results as a leader with that. So
yes,
I would agree.
Well, would you agree, Jeanne? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of laughing because my last boss really was amazing. Why I left had nothing to do with that individual. That person is one of the best leaders I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And so thinking about the questions for tonight, it's kind of like, no, that actually would be a fun and interesting and rewarding trip. But I would say that was one of the few in my professional experiences.
Absolutely. And I can say
answer.
that the person before my last boss, I had the same thought of, why did I leave? They were wonderful. They were great, right? Like, so yeah, I think we all have sort of that the go-to of, yes, they were, really good experiences, and then we've had really bad ones. And again, you're not going to like all of your bosses, but again, it's about really, why is it that you didn't like them? And so for me, I know what I don't want to work in a toxic environment, period, at all. So we don't have to like each other, but I want to be able to work in an environment where I can excel, and then I can build good relationships and do a really good job. But when there's toxicity, that's a game changer for me, because that's where the trauma-informed piece comes in. That's abuse, right? And so if you have folks that are coming in with layers of traumatic experiences already, and are coming into a toxic environment, it's just not okay. It's just really not an okay culture or leadership style. Accenture did a study during the pandemic, and Accenture did a study with 3,200 C-suite executives, 15,000 employees, so a really good sample size. And what they found is that 64% of the person's potential in the workplace was based on the relationships that they have with their boss, with the executives, and with their staff, and in the purpose, having a true purpose at work. So those are two things that 64%, this is the shift that's occurring right now in our workforce expectations. And folks who are not getting that in their work environment, they're choosing to leave. That's the happiness piece that we're seeing. We know that people are going toward happiness and joy and connection and purpose than staying in an environment where they're not getting that. And, we need to be prepared for that. Our organizations, our businesses are small, large, government, private, public. We need to be ready for that different revolution of what workforce wants and what they're asking for.
Yeah, this is so timely. Dawn, you have a lot going on. You're a CEO, you have a consulting business, you're doing a podcast. What do you wish you knew before getting started down this path? And it's really multiple paths, but they're all converging. What do you wish you knew before getting started on this road?
Time. I think for me, I love what I do, first of all. I really love what I do. And I do not put my time into something that I'm not going to be able to put a lot of time into, or that I'm just not going to receive a lot of joy from. That is so important to me right now. So I would say that that's such a good question. I mean, it is really about time. I want to make sure that, and I think everybody who's listening, that the worst thing that you can do is overcommit and get into a situation where you're getting involved and executing these things, and then you don't have enough time to do them well. And then you have to either back out or you're just not bringing value to the table. Assess the time, put your boundaries up, make sure that you're comfortable saying no. I was just literally asked to join a local chapter of an organization, and I wanted to so bad. And I finally just said, nope, I've got a lot going on, and I know that I will not be able to give them my time. So I was authentic enough to say, no, I can't do that, but maybe in a year or so, and be okay saying no.
Can you provide our audience members a few tips for dealing with transformational change?
Accept it that it's here. That change is change, right? And so I think one of the best lessons that you can do is actually a process from ProSci. And ProSci is it's a model, it's a change management model. And they have a process that's called ADKAR, ADKAR. And that's a process of change. And one of the things that's really helpful is if you can acknowledge yourself, if you can see yourself along that continuum of change, and if you find yourself having some resistance around that continuum of change, reach out to a mentor, reach out to someone within the organization and help them better get you through that cycle of change. You don't have to do it by yourself. A lot of times people do not adjust to change because they don't understand why there's change. Like, why are we doing this? Didn't we just do something like a month ago? Why are we doing something again? And so if you can have someone within your organization that can help you get through those stages and help you understand why, educate you on how to get there, get the training for your ability. So now you might know about it, but now you need the skills to actually do it. And then be open to reinforcement. So we need that behavior to stick, while you're going through the change. Reach out for help, understand that you have the right to understand why, and change is going to happen with or without you. If you're finding that change is really traumatic and it's eliciting a lot of emotion for you, then you can address your HR, or you could go to your EAP services and help and get some help to understand why you're being triggered by some of that change.
Dawn, if someone wants to follow you or stay in touch with you, what are the best ways to do so?
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm fairly active on Twitter, and that is at Dawn Emerick, EDD, Dr. Dawn Emerick, EDD. And then I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can visit a website that the Institute, it's under construction. We are building our board of directors right now, so we do not have the website up and running fully, but you can still go and understand a little bit more. You can go to www.traumafreechange.org, and you can look at all the stuff that we're getting ready to launch in the next couple of months. But I'm pretty out there on social media, so it won't be hard to find me.
Well, thank you so much for being here tonight, Dr. Dawn Emerick. We appreciate you joining us. That wraps up tonight's episode of the Floridaville Express. Be sure to tune in on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern to catch our show live. And remember, you can watch previous episodes of the Floridaville Express on our YouTube channel and on Facebook at the Floridaville. Next week, we're going to speak with Jeanne Escavaria, who is a diversity and inclusion expert. She is a former Bronx gang member who was kicked out of her very first high school. She has an amazing life story, so be sure to tune in. It's going to be an amazing show.
And don't forget, if you've been wanting to create a video show or a podcast like this one, we can help you with that. Our company, Rocket Ship Consultants, can strategize with you and help you launch your multimedia shows or events. Also, reach out to us if you're interested in sponsoring this show. Sponsorships create positive long-term brand awareness, introduce new audiences to the important work that you're doing, and keep your organization connected and relevant. Contact us for more information so we can help you focus a spotlight on the trailblazing work that you and your organization are doing. Dawn, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It really was a pleasure and very enlightening and exciting. And thank you, of course, to our viewers. Everyone have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.